who was flying a Catalina and made an attack on a surface U-boat in the Bay of Biscay. And that was at a time when Dönitz's order to the boats was that they were not to submerge, to be driven underwater, which was part of the U-boat in the bay. And he made an attack run, came out of cloud, made a perfect attack run, and the depth charges hung up. And wouldn't charge an armor and guns and everything else, and crew. It's not quick. It takes a long, long time to get to the U-boat. Just now fully aroused, gun. Catalina had one forward-firing machine gun. That was all as an offensive weapon. Standard Catalina, it's now got the big blisters back on the rear hull, the machine gun positions. It's also an amphibian. You can see the wheels coming down now. The floats used for water landing, the wingtip floats, are retracted up to form an end plate on the wing, which increases its efficiency aerodynamically. They are becoming a potential menace in the ops area, so really from it now is the bow turret, which I think would be a very expensive. Don't forget, as we said, for the Beverley Association to pay for its new hangar. And that's been drawn at 3 o'clock, I think, or shortly afterwards. You've still got about 10 minutes, 9 minutes. And Lee Proudfoot, the son of Hoof Proudfoot, very well known as pilot in display work on military aircraft. Initially in very close, thick formation through a series of maneuvers. Going through cloverleaf loop, series of loops with 90-degree turn of direction. The two wingmen rolling out as they come out, the leader staying inverted. Extra 300 in the lead, designed by Walter Extra of Germany, and with a bit more power and a lot cleaner than the two pits. So with more in the bag than the other two wingmen. It was much easier being leader. Crisp road out of that wing over to come back towards us. Building up speed and positioning into classic barrel roll in Vic. Now that's not an easy maneuver to do so, though. It's a particularly difficult maneuver to do with a 65 horsepower engine. Now you've got 180, sometimes 200 horsepower. A very different animal. Up over the top now, positioning for the bomb burst split. Out they go. Aileron outward turn by the two pits, complete. Best way to see a stall turn. Running in. As they come in to cross, here comes Nigel Lamb with the extra. Right up between the two. Very rapid flick roll out of the pits. Equally rapid upward roll, then a slow aileron half roll up. This is the Lexus aircraft that he's flying. This is the classic shape for the standard state-of-the-art international unlimited championship aircraft designed simply to win world championships. The Walter Extra did extremely well, took very high individual honors. The aircraft now into a torque turn, drifting to a stop, almost incredible, still rolling, still rotating and sliding backwards and then tumbling out through his own smoke. Nigel Lamb, British World Aerobatic Champion, or world class, I should say, British National Aerobatic Champion in world class. Flying the Lexus Extra 300. Staggering series of very quick rolls. that long upward climbing roll. And back come our two pits special, Steve and Lee, up to the vertical after the cross, quarter upward aileron roll, drifting a lot of wind up there as you pick speed exactly right. You end up with a slightly wonky microphone lead, which isn't as aerobatic as I thought it was. If you don't get your closing speed absolutely right, you don't end up in the right place at the right time. Now, one of the pits inverted into better, the leader rolling round them very, very closely. This is a brand new maneuver for this season, staggeringly effective. And up pulls the number 2 pits and half rolls out. That's Steve in the rolling aircraft. The 3 now back in the basic rig formation, round steep climbing wing over to come back towards us. Coming back now towards us for the Cuban brake. Up to the vertical, round, cloverleaf over the top, beautifully positioned, down to the vertical, through, getting into position for what I think will be their final maneuver back towards us. Another plan view of the formation as they go over the top. 200 horse in each of the pits, 300 horsepower for the Lexus. The leader now inverted, rolling out smartly, and across they go with the Cuban brake, and away individually. All 3 aircraft recovering from that. Like Cummings, the engines, textile by Cummings, Steve and Lee in the 2 pitches. Rolling cheekily onto his back, just above him, rocking, way back. They love to take people seeing them and enjoying it. Nigel Matic team. Now we were supposed to do, but he's the last carrier-borne 2-seat fighter reconnaissance aircraft in the Navy. Considerable improvement over its predecessor, the Fulmar. When you consider that the Fulmar was a big, heavy 2-seater with a lot of fuel and a lot of equipment, and had the same engine as a single-seater Hurricane and Spitfire, it's not surprising it wasn't much of a performer. The Firefly has the big 2,000 horsepower plus Rolls-Royce Griffon. Maximum speed is 386 miles an hour, which is a great improvement on anything the Navy had before. First of the later series, with the radiator removed from under the nose of the aircraft and put into the wing, clean. It served with 814 Squadron and went on in glory to serve in Korea. She's wearing the markings that she carried in Korea, served with 14th Carrier Air Group, but finished up on HMAS Sydney with the Royal Australian Embark, now flying Whirlwinds. Commanded by a remarkable gentleman called Mike Apps, Lieutenant Commander Mike Apps. And he was ashore one day and found this aircraft, realized 9th anniversary of the first Firefly Squadron. And first public appearance was to reenact the first flight of the first production Mark I from the Great West Aerodrome at Fairley's factory, which is now Heathrow. Fish and a bit of hook back in. Meteor's stupendous, clearing lovely classic shape. The 50s shape. One of a long line of very successful single and two-seat fighters and trainers from Gloucesters. And a Rampart, and a Sabre. Right, again to apparently land the Herc. Meteor was the first Allied jet fighter and the only one to see war service with 616 Squadron, initially from Manston down in Kent against flying bombs, and then from April 45 in Europe against ground cars. 7 was a two-seat trainer, a private venture by Glock, versions based on the trainer for night fighting. The canopy and cockpits of the Mark 7 trainer, the ventral fuel tank, which is common to all Meteors pretty well. The Mark 11 night fighter, the one that we're watching now, came into service in 1950. Made 100 of those, and then the NF-13, which was the same, but it was a tropicalized version for the Middle East Air Force. And Meteor's servant, so it had a 17-year career, lots of places. You've built up an impressive collection of lost children there while we were talking. Sunny 8, its original name. Delivered to the United States Air Force in 1945. Built by the parent company, North American. The Mustang designed originally by North American to a Royal Air Force specification for a new fighter, which was to incorporate the various lessons which had been learned by the fighting in France in 1939-1940. And the United States Air Force weren't in the market for this. They were busy absorbing large numbers of Curtiss P-40s, merely because they were there in production. A couple of Mustangs, they pinched a couple from the First RAF order to evaluate, became very impressed by it, and by the time the Americans and the British had got together, they were replacing the Allison engine with the Merlin, which operated better to supply this particular aircraft. In fact, the original Packard Merlin one was P-51C. Well, it moved into its place in history. It was a brilliant aircraft, well ahead of its time, laminar flow wing. It was the first aircraft which had computer-aided design and manufacturing, what they call CAD-CAM. That's computer-assisted fighting aircraft. The extremely clean fuselage, the design of that big ventral air intake is a masterpiece in itself, and the laminar flow wing tracks. There was mounting political pressure in the United States against the slaughter of four-engine bombers that the Germans were inflicting outside the short-range fighters like the, or shorter-range like the Thunderbolt and the Spitfire. And this, the Mustang, came along just in time, heavily armed with half-inch machine guns. Very tough, very agile, very long-ranged. And in very, very complex battles, the most complex air battle.
One is 2169, and the third one is 4327. Will the winners of the...
Most appropriately named, if you remember your Old Testament. In 5 squadrons equipped with Nimrod 1 and 2, 4 of them still active. Those of you familiar with the audience these days, I think, will see a resemblance to it, particularly in plan view. Rolls-Royce Bay 250s have thrust reversers, which it frequently might. Only at low level at round about 200 miles an hour. It has a total endurance of some 12 hours, and you see now that enormous bomb bay, rather just about half the length of the whole fuselage at the weapons bay, to be more accurate. It's nearly 50 feet long, it's heated. It will accommodate 6 rows of stores, whatever you want to carry, including up to 9 torpedoes, plus a mix of mines and ferry or a flight refueling probe above the cockpit. Variety of electronic sensors and the searchlight carried in the pods on the wing. The Stinger, quite apart from its ability with all the gear it carries to identify, track, and I'm not competing against 4 spares. Being tanked up by Victor tankers enabled the Nimrods to escort convoys to the south and to patrol the Falklands area operating out of Ascension Island, which is 3,800 miles away. We just completed an engine change, I think. This is LF363 and went originally to 3. We come up. Invasion Day markings, here she comes. 3,000 feet.
Yeah. No, I'm not picking Trudio.
And in fact, this is the only one of the flight Spitfires which didn't see wartime service. It was delivered in November 45. She was one of the founder members in 1957 of the Battle of Britain Memorial Flight. So, my apologies for getting that one wrong. I should have stuck to coming in from the right. One of the last production group of Hurricanes built at Langley, late 43. And so I say went to 309 Squadron, Polish 309 Squadron. Again, in fact, I'm confusing you because this is the other Hurricane, of course. Getting myself thoroughly muddled here. Sometimes the Shuttleworth had one. Did. Cam using the same basic structure that had been used for fighters since 1918. A break from that now as the Lancaster comes back. First went into RAF service with 44 Squadron early in 1942 and went on great operational triumphs right up to their last raid in April 1945 on oil storage tanks in Norway. 62 squadrons altogether in Bomber Command were equipped with the Lancaster at one time or another. They dropped 608,000 tons of high explosive bombs and 5.5 million incendiaries. And she's coming through now, flown by Squadron Leader Andy Tomlin, the leader of the flight, with the bomb doors open. Reminiscence of those other later Avro aeroplanes, the Vulcan, and the Shackleton, which is not yet a day, of course, and the Nimrod, all with that same Avro characteristic of that vast weapons bay. Quite small episode, really, although it caught the public imagination in a long and hard and very, very successful career. Most Lancasters, like this one, had Merlin engines, top speed of some 287 miles an hour. So in what condition you measure that, I'm not sure. Probably new from the factory. But Lancaster airframes built and delivered. Total of 8 303 machine guns, a totally inadequate armament, really. Here come the fighters back to join up for at least one formation run past, I hope.
County Council came into being in 1974, we thought that Humberside, because there are 25,000 people here today, we look forward to the support that you've given in the past, to the support you'll give us in the future. Humberside County Council own this airport, which in turn is owned by you, to go on holiday from this very airport that you own. So, as regards the airport and the air show, which is a wonderful exhibition today, may I extend good wishes and warm feelings to you and your family, to a wonderful day and a wonderful future for Humberside Airport and the County Council owning this airport for the next umpteen years. Thank you very much.
It did all the jobs that later on helicopters were introduced to do. It would land practically anywhere. A German commander could land on a road or in a field beside a road with his forward troops. He could hop about the countryside. I was interested in your first announcement. That's the first lost parent message we've had today. There's a Harrier in, full roller landing, a standard loop with a flick roll in the top. Not easy to do with a low-powered, wide-span campaign in 1956. And that's champion in 67, 69 and 72. And by Petter, the same brilliant man who designed the Canberra and the Electric Lightning, or most of the Lightning, designed originally as a single-seat lightweight fighter. A lot of bright new ideas in it, all moving tailplane on this line anyway. Quick turn in, ramp being lowered, big loading ramp down affording access and exit from the fuselage, slowing to a halt, reversible pitch propellers, which means, for instance, that you can back, burning red smoke, which looks very pretty. The Hercules wheeling back, backtracking, using the reverse thrust propellers to get clear. You can well imagine that in a tactical situation, perhaps when an airfield is under fire, as might happen at any moment at Sarajevo, this capacity to maneuver very quickly in a small space is very useful. And away she goes immediately.